Good morning and welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder, and this is BRN AM for Wednesday, April 1st, 2020. And here are our top stories. We'll take a look at the public sector healthcare workforce and also discuss individual retirement marketplaces. Are they a solution for retiree healthcare? Joining me now is Dr. Rivka Liss-Levinson. She's the Director of Research for the Center for State and Local Government Excellence. Rivka, thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you so much for having me. Good to be here.
So it's great to see you, and you are a regular speaker, and actually you've been on the podcast numerous times. Your colleague Gerald was on our program several months ago, so really great to connect with you, and it couldn't be a more opportune time to speak to you about the healthcare research that the organization has done looking at state and local government. So why don't you just break into it and tell us what you found in your research?
Sure. So this study that we did with the support of the de Beaumont Foundation was looking at the composition of the state and local public health workforce and looking at it in the broader context of the overall state and local government public sector workforce. So what we really wanted to do was get an understanding of how the public health workforce, the governmental public health workforce, compares to the state and local workforce overall. And one of the reasons to do that was really so that we could think about the ways in which they're similar and different. And then I know sometimes, we think like individual sectors within public sector workforce are so different, but if you are able to find, where some of the similarities are, you may be able to use some of that information to help inform best practices and to be able to share from one industry to another within the public sector.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, it just makes sense from a benefits perspective, but also from a human capital perspective.
Yes. Many people,
and it couldn't come, Rivka, at a better time given that what's happening around the United States and really around the globe. But let's focus on the report, on the analysis that you all have done and what some of the findings are, because I think the audience would find that absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, so one of the things that we focused on was kind of looking at the demographic makeup of the public health workforce and how that compares with state and local government overall. And so what we found is that the public health workforce overall tends to be more likely to be female, are more racially and ethnically diverse than the broader public sector workforce, are older on average, have higher educational attainment, have somewhat higher salaries, which really goes along with the educational attainment piece, and even have longer tenures than their counterparts in the broader public sector workforce.
So when we're talking about this workforce, you're talking about public universities that have a hospital attached to it. You're talking about public hospitals, public clinics, right? That's who we're talking about.
So it's a really good question. And what I'll say is I think there's some overlap between what the public health workforce does and the healthcare workforce. For example, many folks in the public health workforce are nurses, but there are also a lot of positions that we may not necessarily think about that fall within the public health workforce. So if you think about folks, environmental health directors, people who perform food inspections, that's your public health workforce. If you think about community health educators, behavioral health specialists. So it really runs the gamut in terms of what we're talking about. It's people who help with infectious disease. So it's not just some of what we think of as frontline healthcare workers. There is overlap, but at the same time, public health also encompasses some other positions that I think people don't always think about right away in terms of, how is this happening? How is your swimming pool or restaurant getting inspected? That's public health.
Yeah, absolutely. That is really important aspects of what local government, state government does on behalf of the citizenry. Kind of putting it in the context, obviously we know that of this pandemic, and I want to talk a little bit about that because we see resources are stretched. They're stretched from a human capital perspective, and they're also stretched from just actual resources, the personal protection that people use so there's a lot of aspects of it. But how has this event maybe shaped not only looking at maybe shaped or reshaped looking at this data, because now you have a different lens to look at it, but also possibly future research that maybe the organization would undertake?
So I think one thing that's really interesting here is that, a lot of the talk on the pandemic is emphasizing the resources in terms of physical resources that are needed. So as you mentioned, the personal protective equipment. But what I think this study really underscores is the need to understand the human element, as you said, the people behind who are performing some of these activities that are helping to, protect our lives. So it's not just enough to understand the, as I said, kind of the physical resources that we need, but also this, I think, report helps us to better understand what it is that we need in terms of there's problems with recruitment, retention, overall in the public sector workforce and in the public health workforce. Studies from public health have found that almost half of the state and local governmental public health workers are considering leaving their jobs in the next 5 years. So when you think about that, it's critical, especially in times like this when, when we're so focused on the important role that public health workers play, that we think about what our needs are and what maybe we can learn, as I mentioned earlier, kind of across sectors about what different best practices are and highlighting and sharing those practices. Yeah. I would say the other thing that I think would be interesting though is just thinking in the future about how perceptions of public sector workforce and the public health workforce may change as a result of the pandemic. So thinking about potentially, there's always public health is something that's chronically underfunded, and that's part of, what shapes what positions you have and how many people. And so it'll be interesting to see if we're able to help improve having a skilled workforce of sufficient size for public health and other public sector positions as the fallout from the pandemic continues.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot more to come. I mean, obviously the first need right now is to have these first responders in a position to help those ailing, and actually there's reapportioning and repositioning of individuals in the healthcare sector to do different roles. I know my sister-in-law, who's a physical therapist, has been retasked with handing out, for example, PPE. So there's a lot of that going on. Longer term, and we've talked about this before, both on our podcast and with your colleague Gerald Young, the importance of benefits. And I don't want to get too hung up on money, but at the end of the day, the incentive to do what you're talking about, which is expand the workforce, or with people retiring, and it's an aging workforce. We're all getting older. There's a need to attract, and I think the pension benefits, the benefits are an important part of attracting people to come work for government.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Pension benefits are really important, and I think the other thing will be assessing for individual cohorts what are those benefits that are most attractive to them. So we know that a lot of folks going into public sector work are mission driven, and that's the same whether it's first responders, teachers, or public health workers. And so it's thinking about how you can best leverage what the interests are of folks who are considering going into these positions. What can you offer them in terms of whether it's benefits like pension or healthcare, or whether it's more non-traditional benefits like family leave. For example, we saw that 77% of the state and local governmental public health workforce is female. So perhaps there might be some, added interest in certain benefits, or if you are thinking about student loan repayment for many folks who have to get advanced degrees. So I think it's taking a closer look and thinking about for that specific profession, for that specific cohort that you're trying to attract, what are the benefits that are going to help you really attract and then, retain the workforce that you're looking for.
Yeah, and let's not forget the technological innovations that could be the telemedicine, the teledoc stuff that is out there that I think is being used today by many Americans. Rivka, I want to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk with Rivka about some research done on retiree healthcare. You're not going to want to miss this, so stay tuned right here on BRN AM. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms, especially for the smaller businesses? I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network.
The windows on our homes, they protect us and the ones we love, but they do much more. At Renewal by Andersen, making your home more comfortable is at the center of every window we make. It's why we custom build our windows in America and install them in as little as 1 day. It's why we build our frames with exclusive Fibrex composite material that's 2 times stronger than vinyl. It's why our glass helps keep your home warmer in winter, cooler in summer, and quieter all year long. It's why we stand behind every window with a 20-year limited warranty. Why not help lower your energy costs while giving your home and family the best? Call 1-800-835-6525 to schedule a free in-home consultation. Buy one, get one at 40% off with this special offer. Plus, get special financing with no money down, no monthly payments, and no interest for 1 full year. Renewal by Andersen, the better way to a better window. Call 1-800-835-6525 now.
Welcome back. I'm joined this morning by Dr. Rivka Liss-Levinson. She is the Director of Research for the Center for State and Local Government Excellence. Rivka, thanks so much for sticking around this morning.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, great conversation about healthcare needs in our first segment. Now I want to shift to a very important population and one that is actually under threat from this pandemic, which is retiree healthcare. And you and the center and your colleagues there did some research. You actually released a primer. And again, this was pre-pandemic. But what can you tell us about your research on retiree healthcare?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. So this we felt was really important to help provide a primer for elected and appointed officials to help them better understand some of the innovative options out there when it comes to retiree healthcare. Mm-hmm. We know retiree healthcare is a super complicated topic, and that officials, elected appointed officials, wear many hats in their roles. And so we wanted to provide some background overview on one model that some states and localities are starting to use and many are having success with, which is the individual Medicare marketplace.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us more. I mean, people are used to hearing the terms Medicaid and Medicare, but there seems to have been some innovation in some of the states. So do tell us. I think this would inform the viewers. Yeah,
so the individual Medicare marketplace at its core is a model where state and local government retirement systems move over to contracting with a marketplace vendor. And that vendor then provides retirees with individual plan options for their retiree health care benefits. And what they typically do is set up a health reimbursement arrangement wherein the employee is reimbursed for some portion of the expenses by their employer.
Yeah, and that seems very innovative. I mean, is this taking that almost in a way that high deductible healthcare plan that many of us in the private sector may have, And even some in the public sector have explored that and maybe kind of applying that in some ways to this retiree healthcare. Because at the end of the day, many people in the public sector workforce have in the past had retiree healthcare coverage. That seems to have been reduced over time. So this seems like an innovative way to apply some of those private sector principles to the public sector.
It is. And I would say there's two main things I think that have really been driving this move towards models like this. So one, as you well know, is the aging of the state and local government workforce. We have more people who are needing to have their retiree healthcare benefits in place at this point. And at the same time, we have that retiree healthcare benefits don't necessarily have the same statutory or constitutional protections as pension benefits do. So there's danger of them being reduced or changed in some way, a danger that is not similar for pensions. At the same time, you also have changes in the Government Accounting Standards Board requirements that have really brought concerns about retiree healthcare unfunded liabilities more to the forefront. So with changes, without getting too much into the weeds on this, changes to Government Accounting Standard Board rules in the past couple of years have now made it that your unfunded liabilities, that is assets that you do not already have funded to pay for your retiree healthcare benefits, these no longer can be in the note section of your balance sheet, but rather have to be front and center. So it's something that makes it much more readily apparent to employers and employees of what the status is of these funds for retiree healthcare.
And also rating agencies, which are important for the issuance of municipal bonds and the financial health. The Moody's and the Standard & Poor's and AM Best that kind of vet and have to understand and put forth a rating on states, municipalities. I mean, this is clearly. For number one, retiree healthcare benefits are important for public sector for attracting people who are mission driven. So I think there's a fine line here about reducing benefits versus also reducing interest, meaning interest in coming to work for the government. I mean, I think when politicians and lawmakers and even the citizenry need to understand that if you go all in on one direction or the other, you could potentially turn off. One, there's a financial implications, but you could turn off the ability to recruit and retain workers. And we've seen this really with some of the pension benefits in some of these cities, right? I mean, going to an all-defined contribution model or a 401k-like model has created a disincentive for people to, for example, to become police officers. And they've gone to other counties and municipalities. So I think this is a very important conversation, especially in light of what's happening now today in this country with the pandemic, but also for the future and how we construct our government. I'll give you the last word.
No, you are 100% spot on this. And I think what individual Medicare marketplaces do is it's one option that I think state and local governments and elected officials should be thinking about as they're trying to work through how to provide the best value for their retirees, the best coverage, thanking the employees for all the service that they have provided, while at the same time also thinking about their bottom line and how to mitigate costs to the extent possible. So I think that I hope folks will go ahead and read the report, look at we had a webinar on it a few weeks ago, and that will really give you a better sense of some of the key issues for elected and appointed officials to think about and questions they may want to be asking as they consider a move. And it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. It may not be right for everyone, but we think it's well worth looking into and thinking about as state and local governments are trying to meet the needs of their employees while containing costs.
Absolutely. And I would also add that the citizens, people in the respective locations who are relying on government should also look at it to better inform themselves. And it should never be a one-size-fits-all. And I think once we get through this challenging time in our country's history, we can begin to look longer term and not so myopically. But right now, folks are really focused, obviously, on dealing and saving people's lives and trying to reduce exposure to the pandemic. Dr. Levinson, I want to thank you so much for joining us on the program. Stay safe, and we will talk to you soon as you develop more research.
Wonderful. Stay safe and healthy.
Thanks. And that wraps up this episode of BRN AM. Have a financial topic or someone of interest that you think we should talk to? Drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the news in retirement, markets, technology, personal finance, and more, check out today's edition of The Morning Pulse. So until tomorrow, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.
Attention! The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services has officially authorized new benefits that Medicare Advantage plans may include. To get the benefits you deserve, you can call the Medicare Coverage Helpline.
Hi, I'm Joe Namath. If you're on Medicare, this is important information. I called the Medicare Coverage Helpline and they instantly looked up my coverage. In this one simple call, they offered to enroll me in a plan that includes rides to medical appointments, private home aides, doctors and nurses' visits by telephone, and even home-delivered meals. The plan also includes dental, vision, hearing, and prescription drug coverage, all at no additional cost.
Don't delay. Call to see if the new benefits are available in your area.
Call the number on your screen now. It's free.
Call 1-800-757-1451. That's 1-800-757-1451.